On a Thursday night. This is July 7th, 2022. We are here for our weekly Ask Dawgs Central chat. I am back, joined again by John Smith and Dustin Wood. Nice to have you fellas with us. How's it going this evening?
It's fantastic over here.
Going great. Going great.
The feels like temp in Atlanta was over 100 for the third day in a row today. So a little warm, but doing well.
Good day for podcasting in the air conditioning then.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. We got a lot of awesome questions tonight. John, I know you have a lot of them loaded up. If you guys are Dawgs Central subscribers, we have been paying attention to everything that you've put on the board. We also have put our chat on YouTube. We can see it. So if you guys want to ask questions there, we will be paying attention as they come in. John, what do you got loaded up for us?
Awesome. All right, guys, we got some good ones today. So we're going to start. Today we had a big wide receiver commitment. So we'll start with a couple of wide receiver questions. This one came from one of our subscribers on the Dawgs Central forum. The question is, nobody has ever had a collection of tight ends like UGA currently has and are accumulating. It's like UGA has cornered the market while everyone else is focused on wide receivers. Why is this happening? Why are we loading up on these amazing tight ends and everyone else out there is accumulating the wide receivers?
Well, Georgia uses tight ends. I think that's the most simple answer, right? Is if you look at Todd Monken's offense, yes, there are spread concepts, there's some air raid, read-based concepts, but if you just look at the personnel groupings that are on the field, you saw a lot of, you had a tight end on the field almost every down for Georgia last year, certainly over 90%, and you had two tight ends on the field quite frequently with one inline guy. Last year, that was John Fitzpatrick and Darnell Washington, and then, Brock Bowers being kind of more of that receiving tight end. But I think what you've seen with wide receivers at Alabama, right, where they started featuring wide receivers and feeding them, and then they started signing more of them. Look at Brock Bowers' numbers from last year. Probably the best season by a freshman tight end in the history of college football. 882 yards receiving, 15.8 yards a catch, 13 touchdowns. And he's getting into rounds. They're throwing bones his way, he's getting to run into rounds in for touchdowns. So if you are an athlete, and I think Georgia also maybe realizes tight ends are a matchup problem in a way that really no other offensive skill position can be, just because it forces defenses into different personnel groupings that maybe they don't want to be in. And then that can create numbers advantages in the run game or in the passing game. Or, if you're sticking a linebacker on Brock Bowers, that's a recipe for disaster every time for defense. So I think it kind of goes into Todd Monken's system and just the fact that he's going to take advantage of matchups. And if there's an easy play on the field, he's going to take advantage of that. And I think it's actually quite brilliant, instead of maybe trying to force feed balls to the outside when that's not what the defense is dictating will be easy for you.
Yeah, I like that. I also think I think we saw what Kyle Pitts did at Florida, right? And I think you see something like that. There was a lot that Mullen did with Kyle Pitts that you can create. Like you were talking about, Graham. You can create, when you have the athletes at tight end like that, you can create mismatches all over the field, and it really gives you. I think people see what Brock Bowers did, but I think underneath that, really, the success of Brock Bowers was he's an absolute monster, but it also was a lot of mismatches. It was Henry To'oTo'o trying to get out and cover a guy that has the speed and the size of Brock Bowers, but then he could turn around and block as well. You can absolutely just do a lot of things to confuse a defense. And for me, I think that's part of the reason why Georgia has been able to have success with tight ends is because the pitch is there, right? The pitch from Todd Hartley is, hey, dude, you're an athlete. Like, you got the size, you got the speed, you got the skills. You're going to be lined up on some guy. There's no way he's going to be able to cover you. And we're going to put you in formations. And yeah, sometimes you're going to have to block. But at the end of the day, like, you're going to get opportunities that you would not get other places because of the scheme that we use. And we know how to create those mismatches. And, I would also say I don't. Georgia's offense, I do think, has overshadowed some of the talent that we do have at wide receiver. Right? The question that we're answering right now is everyone else is focused on wide receivers. Georgia is focused on wide receivers too. I mean, there are some guys on this team that are very, very good athletes that some of them were highly recruited wide receivers as well. I mean, Georgia had George Pickens. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL in the spring last year. But I mean, Georgia has some talent at wide receiver. I just think that mismatch game is just so strong for UGA right now that it's hard in some places for wide receivers just because of the reads that Todd Monken is given, the quarterback. It's like you know where a mismatch is going to be, and most often than not, it's going to be one of these tight ends.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would say on the recruiting aspect, the honest thing, if we're going to be honest on the podcast, would be that they're negatively recruiting us across the board on that.
Yeah.
And, I would say that Kirby has stopped a lot of narratives, throwing to the tight end, defensive lines getting drafted. But, I do think that they're getting negative recruited on that. But if we're also being honest, if you kind of look at our board, I mean, really, none of the people that we've been targeted at have even made their decision. And I think a lot of them, they have us on their list and they want to see what Todd Monken's going to do this year. And depending on how that plays out, Hakeem Williams, Tyler Williams is deciding later. Jalen Hale is deciding later. I mean, you got some good guys on the board where if you get those three guys, none of our listeners are going to be complaining about.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dustin.
I mean, we heard for years, right? Like, Georgia's wasting tight end talent, going back to Isaac Nauta, and then Georgia utilizes its tight end talent with Brock Bowers, and I get questions all the time. Why isn't Georgia throwing to Darnell Washington? And so it's like that is the nature of fandom, and I get it. There is never going to be any such thing as a perfectly balanced offense. I also think, like, if you look at modern NFL football, and to a certain extent now modern college football, like, who are the teams that are competing for Super Bowls every year? It's the teams that have mismatches at tight ends. It's Travis Kelce, Gronkowski, OJ Howard, like some of these guys that have been in the NFL. And I mean, Monken had Howard in Tampa Bay and did some really interesting things with him. And that's why when he was hired and you have a Darnell Washington coming in, you have Eric Gilbert coming in, like, I think all of that feeds into it. It's also like tight ends are wide receivers in a lot of scenarios. Like, there's not, if you go and look at Brock Bowers last year and those 800, whatever it was, receiving yards, a lot of those came out with him lined up in the slot or lined up out wide. It's like, we're not talking about, 5-yard in routes on 3rd and 4 from him at an inline position. I also think if you had told me, like, I did our outside wide receivers preview on Dawgs Central this week, and so I sort of went back into a lot of the receiving statistics from last year. Georgia was without fully healthy versions of George Pickens, Kyrus Jackson, Jermaine Burton, Marcus Roseby-Jackson, Darnell Washington, Aaron Smith.
Wait. We had wide receivers injured? Are you telling me that Georgia had wide receivers injured?
Yeah, I know. More than 2, actually. But I think, like, some of this, what happened with Brock Bowers last year, like, yes, do I believe he would have been part of the offense? Certainly. But, I mean, Lad McConkey started at Z receiver against Auburn because Georgia literally had 6 healthy wide receivers, and they still found a way to get him 5 yards clear of his man on the 2 double moves that they ran to him in that game. The AD Mitchell, like, part of this, like, you look at a guy who started at X receiver for Georgia pretty much all season last year, and I know I'm gonna, like, some people are gonna get mad at me for saying this, but if you go into his actual stats last year, in terms of targets versus catches, he was 13th on the team in terms of catch percentage for his targets. He was targeted 52 times. He only caught 55.8% of those balls, 29 catches. Georgia's quarterbacks had a 92.5 quarterback rating when throwing to Mitchell, which is not bad, but they had like a 150 rating when throwing to Brock Bowers and a 154 actually when throwing to Lad McConkey. 14.8 yards per catch is certainly respectable, but he averaged just 2 yards after the catch per reception. So he was 14.8 yards a catch in 2021, but his average depth of target was actually 15 yards. So, like, Mitchell was great, and he made one of the one of the more historic plays in Georgia football history. He was a true freshman. There's a lot that he can still improve on to become like that dude that I think everyone kind of like assumes maybe he was last year at times when really he kind of came on down the stretch, and there was a lot of timing issues between him and the quarterbacks on like stop fade routes and stuff working the sideline, which is what you want to do with your ex receiver who's lined up way out on the sideline. So, and also, I mean, he led the team in drops. He had 6 drops, and 2 of those drops turned into interceptions off of deflection. So, like, maybe he's the guy that breaks this narrative a little bit, and he's that 1,000-yard receiver. But there's also a lot of other guys that could be that guy. Because if Eric Gilbert's coming in at 250 pounds and Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington are healthy, then I think you're going to see him lined up as a receiver quite frequently. If Arian Smith is healthy for 15 games, you're talking about a guy that's averaged nearly 40 yards a catch in his career, 11.75 yards per a route run in his career, not yards per an attempt. Just if he's on the field and he's running a route, it equals 11.75 yards. So there's plenty of talent, but Georgia's had terrible injury luck in that room. Like you said, John, like George Pickens obviously hurt last year. Dominic Blaylock, right? Like if he stays healthy throughout his entire career, maybe that's a very different narrative. So I think it's a myriad of things, but the fact that Georgia won a national title last year with all those guys hurt and didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver is like a credit to Todd Monken, not a demerit, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you can go down the list, but you had Kyrus Jackson wasn't fully healthy off and on, during last season. I will say one of the things, a lot of people. So the question that we were just talking about was, why are other teams loading up on wide receivers when it seems Georgia's focusing on the tight end? There was another question related to that we have on the screen right now that says, with the talent at tight end, can AD Mitchell or another wide receiver blow that narrative regarding UGA and wide receiver production next season? One name that we haven't mentioned is Lad McConkey, who, Lad McConkey is certainly, he's a guy that I feel like at the end of the season, particularly in the Orange Bowl and the national championship game, a lot of the stuff that he did during the year got overshadowed just because of the guys who made plays, kind of during those games. But that's another guy. I don't think he's certainly not a guy that's gonna go out wide like a George Pickens, a healthy George Pickens would. But there are guys on this team that can certainly blow the narrative regarding UGA and wide receiver production. I think to Dustin's point earlier, Kirby Smart. The thing about Kirby Smart that everyone has to remember is he knows what's happening in recruiting. He knows what's going on in college football. He knows what he has to do to create a sustainable program. So you're not just a flash in the pan, had a generational defense, and won a national championship. But also, he's not the kind of guy that's going to go and completely, build an offense around blowing up a narrative, right? I think at the end of the day, I do think that with Georgia's tight ends, what's going to happen is I think the narrative is going to have to be the offense. The narrative is going to have to be what we heard in recruiting this offseason was, hey, we didn't throw a lot in the second half because we were blowing everybody out. Right. I mean, that's what Monken and staff were telling some of these elite recruits was like, hey, when you're up by,
it's right. Yeah.
at halftime or whatever, like what are you going to do? Right. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens, from schematically this year. And I know, Graham, you have a lot of thoughts on that you're going to go into over the next few weeks as we preview the season, but it'll be interesting to see what happens schematically to kind of blow up some of those narratives.
Well, and I think the question to ask sometimes is like, would you rather win games by 40 points running the most effective offense you can run, or would you, I think there are legitimately, I feel like I know some Georgia fans, I'm in some Twitter chats where all they want to talk about is wide receiver narratives. And it's like, would you guys, sometimes I feel like there's people that would rather see Georgia go 10-2 and have a 1,400-yard receiver. Yeah. And it's just like, that's not how this works.
That's true. All right. Let's see what else we got in the chat, guys. I'll throw up another question, then we'll go to the YouTube chat. Let's talk about recruiting real quick since we started kind of with scheme. Is July still going to be a good month for UGA when it comes to recruiting? Now, in fairness, this question was asked earlier this week on our Dawgs Central forum. We've had some pretty good, kind of 2024 news. But Dustin, how are you feeling about 2023 and the month of July for UGA?
Well, I'm just going to kind of go through the board, and I know we have a few people that are going to be committing. We have a few that we think might pop this month, just depending on it. I would go with the 2 middle linebackers. I know I'm not going to get the exact days in July right, but I know Troy Bowles from his dad coaches for the Bucks. He's going to be committing somewhere around the mid-teens.
16th, I believe.
Us at Dawgs Central, we feel like we're pretty confident he's going to choose the Bulldogs. We also have Raylan Wilson. He hasn't came out with a date, but we're pretty confident in the next probably 30 days before his senior season, he's probably going to make a decision. And we think it's a really good chance it'll be Georgia. So there's 2 people right there. We have Aguero going later in this month.
The 23rd. Yeah.
Yeah, I know people thought it was a Ohio State Georgia battle, but Miami would probably be second place for me. But I still feel like the relationship with Will Muschamp probably wins out there. That's one of his main guys he's been with. And then probably the bigger one, I think, I know Graham's guy on the defensive line. I know Jarrett is probably, I think the industry hasn't ranked too low. But that's a big decision. I would say out of all of those, that would be the one that I wouldn't be the most confident about, but I'm still pretty confident that he probably picks Georgia. But, I mean, you're looking at 5 guys right there that if you land all those guys, they'll easily be in the top 5, maybe top 4 after all that's said and done.
Well, and also, did you mention Julian Sayin?
We have not. That's what I was going to ask as well. That was another question that we had related to recruiting was, will Julian Sayin commit to UGA before August? So that goes into this July question as well.
I think it could be close. If I had to pick, I would say yes. I think he will pick Georgia definitely before the fall, but I'm pretty sure his schedule, what he told me is that, they're doing some team summer workout stuff and in the mornings and 7 in the evenings, but then they have a 2-week dead period coming the last 2 weeks of July. So that would seem like a natural time for him to kind of make that decision and deal with, just being committed somewhere and announcing a commitment is a process, and there's people like me that want to hit you up for interviews, and everyone's calling to say congratulations and all of that good stuff. So if I was gonna pick, I would say I think we see him go between July 17th and 31st.
Yeah. So we have two threads here, right? We have 2024, which is starting to hit, which feels a little early, but some of these guys, especially the high profile guys in recruiting these days, right? They want to make a commitment, and then so they can openly recruit their friends, openly recruit their skill players, openly recruit the guys they're going to camps with, all those things. So that's 2024. We had Nikar commit, we had Landon Thomas commit. That's the number 1 tight end in the 2024 class and a top 10 wide receiver in the 2024 class. Yeah. And Julian saying potentially committing here soon. And we're leaning toward UGA. And then what Dustin was talking about is the 2023 class, right? If you tell me 2023 class this month, that you're going to have 4 or 5 of the guys that you mentioned, Dustin, hit. I mean, the answer to the question that we're answering right now is July still going to be a good month. It's going to be a good month. It's going to be a good month. It's already been a good month for 2024 for all intents and purposes. And now Kirby and team get to try to hang on to these kids for 2 years.
Let me say one last thing on 2024. If y'all are looking for wide receivers, it's good we have BMAC because pretty much all the big name, high profile wide receivers are in Florida. So we at least have a chance. I would be honest with you, if we had Hankton, I'm not going to say anything bad about Hankton, but his ties are not in Florida. A lot of these guys would not be considering him. They don't have that relationship. But 2023, just look at the top 10 wide receivers. We could get 3 5-star wide receivers probably next class. So it's going to be a lot easier for us next year unless we just kind of mess up that narrative, which I think BMAX, he's going to be a great hire going forward on that.
Yeah, the Green Soldier in the YouTube chat said, I still feel like we need to get one really elite wide receiver per class, which we can with BMAC. I agree. I think, my personal opinion is that Brian McClendon has, he just has a different perspective when it comes to recruiting than Cortez Hankton had. And I think he came in and, rearranged the board, probably took names off, or just had to reshuffle, and so that does put you in a situation where him coming in the spring, now you're trying to build those relationships and get those kids for the 2023 class. But I'm excited for what's coming down the pike. I think we are going to be in a good situation from a wide receiver standpoint, especially. I think 2023 is going to be better than people expect. I think 2024 is going to be elite, personally. All right. One other recruiting question from the YouTube chat. Caleb Downs is a no-go, right? Dustin, tell me what your thoughts are, and Graham, you can chime in too. I'm not close to Aguero and Downs, but what are your thoughts on kind of those two going to the same school? Like, what how is that going to play out?
I personally don't think that they're going to have any issue. If you look at the depth chart, they're not going to have any time, bare minimum, play by their sophomore year if you look at who we have on staff right now. So there's not going to be an issue with either one of them coming in together. But with Downs, if anybody says they know for certain where he's going right now, they're just lying to you. It's a 3-team battle between Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. I think all 3 staffs feel decently. I wouldn't feel good making a prediction. I'm not going to say he's a no-go. I definitely would not make a prediction of Georgia right now, but I think it's going to be one of those things that you're going to follow, and then 24 to 48 hours, you might be able to tell where he's going to go. But I will say one thing you need to watch out. He's really good friends with Justice Haynes, and Justice Haynes might or might not be a commit by the time he makes his decision. So kind of watch if Kirby plays that chess move before he commits.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Dustin. I think there's a lot of narratives out there maybe right now around Downs, but I think it's, I think Ohio State feels right now maybe like the team to beat, but that's just speculation, reading tea leaves, and those things change quickly. So, yeah, I think it could still happen, but I do feel confident that Aguero is, going to commit to Georgia. I think it's a matter of just kind of when, not if. So, I don't see that as an issue though. Like you said, I think the depth chart and safety is definitely a little bit thin. And with transfer portal and all of that, it's just guys come and go quick. And I also think that, Georgia did have a good DB class last year, but it's like these safeties can also end up being stars very easily. And so all of a sudden it's like, in a way, you really need 3 safeties on the field in a sense. So, kind of that tweener position there at star is a tough one to fill. And one of those guys might be a better fit for that. So, to be determined.
These guys that are being recruited are definitely they're fitting a system where you're going to have rotations and you're going to have, third down packages that are going to put multiple and not more than 2 safeties on the field at times. So it's a great point.
One thing I will say on that, if you watch how Kirby's playing it this year compared in the past, he's more big fish hunting right now. And if he misses what he's going to miss, like if he doesn't hit downs, he'll just take that and go to the portal with that. So if you kind of look at people
that's a great point.
I've been trying to preach this, but NIL, these people are bona fide superstars when they go into these campuses. And if they don't jihad with the staffs, there's going to be a lot of people we were really close that we missed out on that would probably shift to Georgia. And I'm sure if these situations, they're probably hoping that they can get a spot in. So Kirby's not going to take a 3-star last minute in a lot of these situations where in the past he would have.
Yeah, let's hop into that question since you mentioned NIL, Dustin. So we've seen, the question is, we have seen UGA lose some recruits over NIL deals. Should there be concern that UGA is not keeping up with Texas and Miami, or were the 2 that were mentioned when it comes to NIL money? I have thoughts on that. Yeah, go for it, Graham. You go first.
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like what we've learned about Kirby Smart, and a lot of this stuff never becomes public, right? Or never becomes widely known to the public. Sometimes there's stories that never leave our forum, right? Or, however you want to phrase it. But like Kirby's always going to put program culture over everything. And like, I don't know if the turning point was Brenton Cox. For me, there's a little bit of a correlation. You can kind of look back and say it was around that time where there sort of became a shift where it's like, I don't care how talented you are. If you're going to be a problem and you're going to mess up what we're trying to do here from a team mentality standpoint, then get out and go, right? And I think like for UGA, especially at certain positions like D-line. Georgia was just in a recruiting battle with Texas for a defensive tackle, and the kid went to Texas, right? And there was a lot of talk of NIL money involved in that, and it's like, if you're a guy that is going to look seriously at how you're going to be developed at Texas versus Georgia after what Trey Scott has done over the last few years, and decide to take a little bit of money now instead of bet on a lot of money later, then like maybe that says something about how you feel like you're going to stack up against the rest of that room. I don't know. And that's not always the case, because I want to be clear, there's plenty of kids here that are dealing with family situations and stuff that we don't know about. And they might need money right now just to make life work okay. And so like I by no means want to make blanket statements about all players making certain decisions, but I also think that like there's some of these programs that are being very sloppy with how they run NIL, and it's more public than not. But like the way that Georgia works, I know that they want to keep any kind of NIL stuff out of the headlines. They are trying to follow the rules and not use NIL as an inducement. But like if it's a guy that they really, really want, I think I think they're going to find that money for NIL. But I don't think they're going to. I think Georgia's in a spot where it's like they don't have to pay more than what a player is worth. This Rashada kid, the quarterback that was down to Miami and Florida, I don't think he got $9.5 million like they said, but I think he got millions of dollars. And then he went out to Elite 11 and, went like 6 for 21, I think, in a scrimmage out there. So it's like, how does that investment look right now? Not super good.
So my thoughts are kind of to what Dustin was saying a few minutes ago. Kirby Smart. So Georgia is doing NIL. They're trying to do it by the rules, like Graham said. There are collectives, there are boosters, there has been money in college football for a long time. There is still money in college football. There has been money in the Georgia program, and there's still money in the Georgia program. What I think has changed and kind of Kirby's approach is, you mentioned the shift with maybe Brenton Cox, maybe it was around that time, but I think it's for me, it's been a situation that transfer portal has changed the game for Kirby Smart, right? He's in a situation where let everybody else take the bullets for NIL. Let everybody else treat these kids like they're absolute royalty when they walk into a room. And I'm going to keep recruiting the way that I have been recruiting and selling them on development and drafts and championships and facilities and all of these things. And yeah, there's NIL money, but at the end of the day, I think Kirby is banking on a lot of talent being available in, whether it's the portal or whether it's guys who went to a program and they're really talented, and whether it's guys that just decide to leave because they want a better opportunity, or whether it's guys that went to a place and then all of a sudden realize, hey, this locker room is a shit show because of this NIL. And that's what I'm very interested to see what's going to happen. We already had this with Texas, right? So Texas defensive lineman, senior defensive lineman, I can't remember his name now. In the spring of this year, last season, he said, I feel like we had guys come in and they just want to chase money and chase women, and they don't want to actually, do what it takes. Yeah, do what it takes to win football games and build a championship program. And you have a guy at Texas who has been around for a while, who's looked at as a leader of that team, saying those things, and then Steve Sarkisian having to come out and say, hey, we want to keep family business like in the locker room, like we should encourage that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, right, I think that's what I'm interested to see is what happens to the culture of these locker rooms, because Kirby Smart is not going to risk the culture of the program, because he could. Georgia doesn't have Texas money, but Georgia has money. Like Kirby Smart could have the Ferrari parked outside of Butts-Mehre if he wanted to have the Ferrari parked outside of Butts-Mehre. But he's taking
Ford truck kind of guy.
the F-150, the Raptor. But yeah, I personally, I think, Graham hit the nail on the head, and you did too, Dustin, where there are a lot of opportunities to get players in this day and age with the transfer portal. You don't have to hit them with things that would be a detriment to your locker room in order to get good players.
The last thing I'll say, just to remind everybody of this, is like what a kid is rated on 24/7 or Rivals or ESPN or On3 or whatever it is. Like, that's not the same internal ranking that Georgia's staff might have for that position group, right? Like they have their own board evaluations. There's also the idea, it's like upside here and kind of where can these guys improve? So I think that's worth remembering in all of this, is just like, you might think a guy's a 5-star because he's rated a 5-star, but Georgia might think like, this is maybe the third best guy we're taking at this position.
Yep.
So
Well,
we're not going to play the
Kirby
game.
said it. Kirby had a press conference that I tweeted a clip from a couple times before the Orange Bowl, where they asked him about, how do you convince good players to come play at Georgia when they're not going to get playing time early on. And Kirby Smart said, I've never had an NFL scout ask me how much a guy played as a freshman. I've never had an NFL scout ask me. They want to know where guys are in year 3. And I think what Kirby has built is that depth chart that's what he's focused on as well. He's focused on this kid right now. Where can he be in year 3? And that's why I think there are differences, because development, you have a lot of players who are absolute studs coming out of high school, and maybe they've peaked, right? I mean, that does happen where you have a kid who is a 5-star, he comes out and he doesn't get better because of whether it's coaching staff or whether sometimes just kids they peak in high school, and then now you're in a situation where so I think they look at folks they can develop. All right, a couple more recruiting questions, and then we can move on to something else. Is there a chance that UGA gets Impemba and TJ Shanahan? This is from the YouTube chat.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, Pimba, I'd be very confident as of right now. I know things could change with some people on the board that we have, but as of right now, I would say he's more of a Georgia lean. Now, TJ Shanahan, I know he's probably going to probably decide sometime soon, but I would say he's probably going to go to Texas A&M. But I mean, I won't go too much in the offensive line, but that's another position where some of these guys we're going for are going to decide a little bit later. So that was probably where I would lean on this too.
Well, and here's the thing: we know that recruiting is not over till it's over. So even for 2023, it's still the summer, and so there's still time for some of these kids, even if they do decide to commit, and especially
unless they sign their NIL rights away to a Texas A&M district.
Well, that's true. The guys in the suites. All right. Anyway, do you think we get serious with the Baylor or Tulane 2023 QB commit? So this is a 2023 quarterback question. Graham, what do you think about 2023 quarterback situation?
Man, I don't know. I think my hunch is no, because I think Julian Saint's going to be in the boat, and regardless of what everyone else thinks, I think that Georgia actually is in a pretty okay position with the quarterback room for 2023, because I think Carson Beck is a lot better than most people want to think or realize. So I think it's more all the chips in the middle of the table for that 2024 quarterback, because I think Saint is probably the best prospect that Georgia's been in on at QB in maybe 15 years or so. Like, I would go back to Stafford.
Agree.
So if something falls in their lap, I don't think they're going to say no, but it's like, I also don't think they want to do anything. Like, 5-star quarterbacks, they basically line up and they pick their slots. And I understand why people get weary of, like, is it worth me following recruiting for the 2024 class when these kids are so far away? But it's like, with quarterbacks in particular, it is, because these kids pick where they're going. They kind of claim their spot and they don't go anywhere else. Maybe, like, I could see Georgia taking like a late in-state guy for 2023, like on, in March maybe, or whenever the final signing day is for that class, that maybe blows up and has a good senior year. But it's just like, I don't know that it's worth them really kind of playing that game.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me pause is, and we've talked about this previously, is that Kirby Smart has taken a quarterback every class that he's been at Georgia, and so do we really think he's going to go? Do we really think he's going to go a whole cycle and not actually take a quarterback? And there's a number of reasons why he would or would not do that, and only the staff, they only know what's going on in the room, and kind of. It's a lot of factors, right? Where are guys' heads? Where are they developing? Like, is there potential for guys to leave because at the end of the day, we saw it with we saw it. I mean, 2020 was a super weird year. But we also saw it with 2021 with JT Daniels. Like we've seen where depth at QB has been critically important and has been an issue. Yeah. And so I think I'll be surprised if we don't take a quarterback. I don't think that it's going to be personally, I don't think we're going to get a flip from Baylor or Tulane were the two that were mentioned. I personally don't think we're going to get a flip from something like that. I think it'll probably be a guy that's has some skills that's lower down on the chart that's probably not committed yet if we take one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
go for it.
Well, I was just saying, I think it depends on maybe how Brock Vandegrift and Stockton look this fall. That might determine. And, maybe you get a one and done guy out of the portal for a final year or something like that to bridge that gap. But yeah, sorry. What were you going to say, Dustin?
No, so the Baylor guy, he has ties to Texas A&M. Jason had told me this past week. I don't know if it's someone in his family or a coach or something, but somebody in the Texas A&M. I would look for him to flip the Texas A&M. The Tulane guy actually has the same quarterback trainer as Sayin does. So I don't think we do that because they're too close in time. So I don't see that happening. And going back, I mean, I'm in the boat that I don't think if you look back in the past where in 2019 you have Fromm and Stetson and a backup, like a walk-on as your third quarterback. I think Kirby went through that and he's like, I'm not going to do that again.
Agree. Yeah.
I think it's setting up 100% to where this is going to be one of the better situations for a transfer quarterback to come in. And I don't think for 1 second Kirby is worried about Carson Beck's feelings. That doesn't mean that Carson Beck won't win the job. But he is.
I didn't say that.
He's not. No. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying people are going to be out there saying, "Well, Carson Beck's waited his time." Well, he's not that patient.
No. Well, people will be saying Brock Vandegrift, Gunnar Stockton, right? I think. Big time college football. I mean, Alabama just did this. They're doing it right now with they got. The Holstein kid who was like the number 8 QB in the 2023 class. And now they're going after Dylan. Longer, who's the number 9 quarterback in this class, right? Like feelings don't matter when it comes to a quarterback room. But that's a great point, Dustin, that I think that's something that is available, that it doesn't have to be a high school graduate class of 2023 guy. You can go to the portal and get a QB that wants to come play at Georgia, and you have that immediate eligibility.
And the dominoes to that is if you're saying and you see that a transfer quarterback comes in, let's say he beats out Beck, well, you know that there's going to be some transfers out. So that's an even more advantageous situation for saying, because he's probably going to be just left with one of the 3 that we currently have right now.
Yeah, I think Kirby knows. I will say we're talking about 2023. I think the staff knows that they have to hit on an elite quarterback for 2024. And by elite, it's got to be in my opinion, it's got to be one of the top 4 guys. So Raiola is Ohio State right now, but that leaves you with Sayin, Jaden Davis, DJ Lagway, like those kind of guys. It's got to be somebody in that upper echelon for me. All right, let's talk about a roster question. What's the running back order after Kenny McIntosh? This was asked on our forum, so I forgot who asked it. I'm sorry. I'll have to go back and look, but they're assuming that Kenny McIntosh, Lady C, is assuming that Kenny McIntosh is going to be the starter. What's the order, Graham?
I would agree with her assumption that Kenny McIntosh will be the starter. And then I think Kendall Milton's the clear number 2 guy right now. But Dejan Edwards is a really good back that has been very, very impressive whenever he's got a chance to step on the field. And it's not just situations where he's coming in against bad teams and running through giant holes. Like his vision is very, very impressive, and he has tools, and he runs low to the ground. He gets a lot of yards after contact. I think that he's going to get carries because Georgia's always going to rotate, a minimum of 3 and often 4 running backs throughout a season to keep everybody fresh. And you need that many guys in the SEC. You saw what happened to Alabama's running back room last year, where they basically got down to one healthy back, and he wasn't really even healthy himself. So I think that it's McIntosh, Milton, Edwards, but Branson Robinson is kind of the X factor because that dude's a freak, and he's built like a baby Nick Chubb, and when he shows up, you don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I think Branson Robinson is going to get some carries in some games where, that late third quarter, early fourth quarter Kirby Smart death march. I think he's going to get some carries, but I agree with you. I agree with your order as well. I think it's going to be very hard. What we do know, right, and I think it's important for the listeners because they know this as well. But starting lineups, starters, especially at places like running back or places like defensive line, it doesn't really matter. You're going to rotate guys. Like you're gonna have a Zamir White, James Cook situation with Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh, and but I think Kenny McIntosh is going to be the guy out there to start the game on September 3rd. All right, let's do a fun one real quick. What's your favorite meal at Waffle House? This came from the Dawgs Central forum, who they like their food and drink over on Dawgs Central. What's the order? Do they have Waffle House out west, Graham? I'm sorry, I should.
They do in select spots, yes.
In select spots.
No, come on, I want to hear it. Let's go.
All right, mine is very simple. Mine is double hash browns, scattered, smothered, covered, diced, and chunked. So that is cheese, onions, ham, and tomatoes. And I get a pecan waffle and an order of raisin toast. So I quadruple
double
carbs.
Quadruple carbs.
And I quadruple because I got the double hash browns, which are the carbs. Then I got the raisin toast and the pecan waffle. That's my order every time, just about.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, mine's the waffles, the double hash browns, and I'm a bacon, and obviously the coffee too.
Love it.
It's a good hangover meal.
the best hangover meal.
So when I was in college, there was still a Waffle House in 5 Points in Athens. R.I.P. to the 5 Points Waffle House.
R.I.P.
But I lived just a couple blocks down, kind of off Millage from there. So I would often take a cab straight from the bars to Waffle House and then walk home from Waffle House. There was a cook there named Caleb, who was a really just a wonderful, saintly man. Put up with a lot of drunken bullshit from a lot of different people, but he had a special called Caleb's Eggs, and for $3.75, you got they said it was 3 scrambled eggs, but it felt more like 5. And he would scramble the eggs with ham, bacon, and hash browns, and put cheese over them. So, and it was $3.75, which as a college kid, that's the type of 2,800 calorie meal. Yeah. And he would serve, toast and all of that good stuff. Maybe throw a waffle in if I was feeling frisky, but yeah, I mean, I can't order that. I mean, I guess I could kind of try to duplicate it, but I have a strong nostalgia for that menu item because it wasn't really a menu item. It was just this low key thing. And if you knew about it, he'd hook it up. So
it's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Well, it sounds like we all have taken a little bit of time off of our lives at Waffle House.
This is a pro Wahoo podcast for sure.
Absolutely. If you want to sponsor, info@dawgscentral.com, Waffle House executives. All right. Any update on guys that were injured? So a lot of guys, right? Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, CJ Smith, Arian Smith, Tate Ratledge, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always hesitant to speak too definitively on injuries because especially this time of year, there's not a ton that comes out on it. Arian Smith, I think we saw on G-Day, like he's back to full speed. CJ Smith is one that I really don't know a ton about. But if they can get him and Arian on the field together at the same time, this is something I wrote about this week. That's a frightening proposition for defenses. Tate Ratledge, by all accounts, is progressed well. I know they were very careful with him in the spring, but it sounds like, from a workout standpoint, he's full go. And I think everyone expects him to be ready to come in and try and fight to take his starting position back at guard this fall. I think that's a big one because by all accounts, he was the number one guard in camp last year by a wide margin. So I think if Georgia can get him back, that's huge. And I expect him, barring a re-injury or something new, I expect him to be in there. Darnell, yeah, that's a tough one, man. Like, he kind of reminds me of like some certain NBA centers that we've seen over the years, like a Greg Oden type of guy right now, where it's like he's injured that foot twice. He's such a big human being that you do start to worry just, is he built in a way that his feet or his ankles or whatever just can't handle that size. So I think that's a huge question mark, and I don't know what the answer is on that. I haven't heard anything. I want to be clear. I haven't heard anything to make me believe that like his timeline has gotten pushed back in any way, but it's just like he never really got healthy from the last foot injury, and then has another injury, an identical injury. So that's I hope. Oh, and then Brock Bowers, I think is like doing well. I think they kind of just like there's no need to play Brock Bowers on G-Day, like just let him chill, let the shoulder heal. Well, they'll bring that car out of the garage when they're ready to drive it.
Yeah. Well, so fall camp starts August 4th.
Yep.
So I think that's when we'll likely start really hearing things about, kind of the status of guys. So summer workouts, especially, over the next few weeks, they are voluntary mandatory. So they're technically can't be mandatory, but we know how that goes inside the Georgia program. So guys are working out, but I think there's a varying degree of what's actually happening with guys who were injured. But we'll find out the beginning of August because that's go time. When you get there and you're 4 weeks out from a game, that's really when you know where guys are. Jeff asked in the YouTube chat, is the freshman linebacker ever going to play again, the one with the neck injury? So that's CJ Washington. Have no idea. But thoughts and prayers to CJ. He had a pretty tough injury in spring. Kirby Smart, gave the last update on it where he was going to go see some doctors and he was going to be in a neck brace for a while. So certainly don't anticipate him being back anytime soon. But hopefully he can get back. All right. Last question from the Dawgs Central forum. If you have any questions in the YouTube chat, go ahead and drop them as we wind down here. Are there any underrated prospects or kids that may be leaning somewhere else that we could see UGA end up getting in the end?
Dustin, I'm going to defer to you on this one, man.
Yeah.
Underrated. I don't know. It's been kind of out. There's the Penn State wide receiver. That's not really going to be world shattering news. We had him on campus and offered him Kazim Haynes. I would kind of keep an eye on him. But I would say I think it would be very shattering if you got both of them. But I would say Russell and James Smith. I don't think a lot of people think we could pull off both of them. If I was going to go out the box and make a pick, I would probably go towards those two. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think Rosal has a good chance of possibly being in this class and could sway them. And then an outside the box name to kind of watch. Florida just picked up a top 100 defensive lineman. I think that kind of bodes well for Kelby Collins. I would keep an eye on
That's
him.
the one I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Graham, you want to?
No, you're good.
You want to elaborate on Kelby?
Good mention.
Yeah, you want to? Yeah, go for it.
I mean, we posted an update on the forum about him. Started like from a very, very reliable source. I know that Georgia is hard after him because, like Dustin was talking a moment ago about kind of some of the linebackers and edge guys. Georgia's in on a lot of elite linebackers and inside linebackers and pass rushers in this class, and I think that there are some guys that are very highly rated by the services that Georgia maybe has backed off on a little bit because they really like Collins. And it's a scheme decision in a sense, right? Because like he's 6'5", 280, and he's a guy that can play that. Like Georgia, if you look at their normal alignment, there's not normally two true edges on the field. There's a guy like a Trevon Walker or a Malik Herring, and then you have like a Nolan Smith or a Robert Beal opposite side of them on most standard downs. So I think Collins is that kind of body type that could be that. They call it their buck end, and they're in the regular front they run, the mint front. So sort of that 4-eye defensive end at 280, that big enough to stand up against SEC offensive lines and clog gaps in the run game, but athletic enough to rush the passer and could probably also dip inside and play that 3 technique at defensive tackle on obvious third down situations where they want to bring more speed in on the edges to try and get up there and cause some havoc on the quarterback. So he's one I think is like those. We were talking earlier about sort of Georgia having their own board that's very different sometimes than how the services rank guys. I mean, he is a top 60 overall player, but I think Georgia sees him as, potentially like another one of these kind of Trevon Walker types that could be just a freak sort of athlete for him. The other guy I was going to say, like, not necessarily off the radar in terms of being committed elsewhere, but both Tyler Williams and particularly Tyler Williams, but also Jalen Hale, both wide receiver guys that, like, I think have started to climb in some of the recruiting rankings lately, but Williams in particular has only played 1 season as a wide receiver in high school. He was a high school quarterback. He's a basketball guy. Very, very long, extremely fast. Just for a guy with his length, he has agility, particularly lateral agility, that you just don't see very much. So I think he could end up like his ceiling, I think, is as high as any receiver in this recruiting class. And Jalen Hale is a guy that, ran like Arian Smith type speed in the 100-meter dash. So he's another one of those guys that I think has that burner kind of over the top potential, but he's also a little bit crisper route runner than most track guys that you normally see. I think he's the type that could come in and, take a little quick curl route or slant route, break a couple tackles and go. So I think he's a little bit more durable and a little bit more physical after the catch than the type of receivers you normally see with his speed. So those are 2 that I think, like, if Georgia can land them, could end up being just extremely explosive right off the bat.
Awesome. One last question from the YouTube chat, because I think this is interesting. Are we expecting Pop, that's Jamon Dumas Johnson, to call plays, or Tresman Ryan, or does Nolan Smith call them from the OLB?
Good
question.
Yeah, that is a good question. And I don't have an honest answer to it. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say Tresman, just because the experience. And I think he's kind of the clear number one at inside linebacker right now. I think
Mhm.
that Dumas Johnson and Jelon Walker are going to fight it out, and I'm sure you're going to see both of them on the field a lot. And I think Georgia played 3 inside linebackers a lot last year in many of their packages, and that's kind of the times they were most effective as a defense. So I think if the inside linebacker is calling the plays, it's probably going to be Marshall. But everything I heard out of spring practice is that Nolan Smith and Robert Beal have been like so on top of things that with Chidera Uzo-Dribe coming in, the new kind of edge coach, like he's told people that there are a lot of situations in the spring where he didn't even have to like go and correct a mistake that was made because Robert Beal or Nolan Smith was getting to the young guy before he could. So that seems like it would bode well for them possibly being guys that are trusted to make those play calls.
Yeah, I think Robert Beal and you hit the nail on the head. I think Robert Beal and Nolan Smith are going to anchor the leadership of that front seven, and I think you're at a place too where Georgia's good enough on defense where the play calls can come from those spots if they need to. All right. Speaking of linebackers, I'm going to drop some linebacker stuff on the forum this weekend. Was able to take a look at Glenn Schumann doing a breakdown of what he looks for in linebackers and how he coaches those. And so if you're not a member of Dawgs Central, go ahead and sign up for an account, and you can check that out this weekend. Excited to break that down for y'all. Anything else before we go?
Go to dawgcentral.com/register and subscribe. We're still $33.18 for 6 months, $33.18. So that's basically $5.50 a month to get you through football season. It's a screaming deal.
You can't buy a pack of hot dogs for $5.
What would that buy you at Waffle House?
There is no
Caleb's
Waffle House
eggs.
field that's $5 at this point.
Yeah, but that was like 2008. So Caleb's eggs are probably like $9 now. But yeah, I mean, go check it out. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. Dustin and Jason are as on top of UGA recruiting as anyone that I've found in the space. And yeah, John's breaking down coaching techniques from Glenn Schumann. I've got advanced statistical position previews for every position group coming down the pipe. Just started with outside wide receivers. That article is unlocked because I want you guys to get a taste of, what we're going to be doing. So please come and check it out. And if you come, you can just ask us these questions anytime. You don't have to wait once a week for us to air this. And at some point, this show may become subscriber only as well, because we are giving away quite a bit of good intel here. So come in.
For the time being, we'll be here on Thursdays. So go create an account, throw your questions in, and we'd love to have you over there. All right, gents. Have a good weekend, everybody.